Welcome back to the journey of little Ly and Diep. With just a snap of his fingers, the billionaire father-in-law turned their lush cassava fields into ashes. Little Ly's chickens were wiped out overnight. Then came the chilling ultimatum. Either vanish from my son's life or start picking out a coffin for this child. Facing the barrel of a gun and fearing for her child's safety, Diep is forced to sever her final ties. A stinging slap, a tear-stained divorce paper, and those heartbreaking words, "James, I hate you. Get out of here." But the tycoon has no idea. Behind Diep's retreat lies a brutal revenge plot James has been quietly preparing. Will James crawl back to his father to beg for his family's lives? Or will he be the one to put his own flesh and blood behind bars to end this nightmare? The horrifying truth is about to be revealed. Don't miss a single second hit. Like and subscribe now to support Diep and James in this life and death showdown. The storm from last night had passed, leaving behind a sky that was eerily clear. But the clarity didn't bring its usual sense of peace. In the small kitchen, the clinking of dishes sounded harsh and hollow. Diep stood by the doorway, her eyes dark and heavy from a sleepless night. She looked down at her hands. The scratches from the rocks last night had started to scab over, throbbing with pain. But the physical ache was nothing compared to the coldness spreading through her chest. On the table sat the pebble necklace James had made for Ly. Its bright red string was a vivid reminder of a love that had just walked through the gates of hell together. James walked in, still wearing his old work gear. He had a bright smile on his face, reaching out to hug his wife from behind. "Morning to the bravest cassava bread baker in the world. I checked the truck. I'm taking you and the little one out today." James stopped. Diep's voice was soft and thin, but it cut through the warm air like a blade. James froze his hands, hovering in midair. The smile faded from his lips. "What's wrong? Are you still shaken up about what happened at the creek? It's over now, honey." "It's not about the creek." Diep turned around her eyes, avoiding his staring instead at the empty space behind him. "I think we need to end this, right here." The silence in the room was suffocating. James took a step forward, reaching for her shoulder, but Diep flinched away. That distance hurt him more than 1,000 wounds ever could. "End this. What are you talking about, Diep? We just survived together. We just promised to be each other's home." Diep let out a dry, bitter laugh. She pulled a crumpled white envelope from her apron pocket. "A home built on sand is bound to collapse sooner or later, James. Your father, he was here." James went pale. He took the envelope. Inside wasn't money, but photos. Pictures of Diep, struggling in the fields, selling bread at the market, and legal documents regarding the deed to this land, the land her family had farmed for generations. What did he say? James gritted his teeth, his hands shaking. "He said you belong to another world, a world of high rises and million-dollar projects. And me, I'm just a widow with a small child and a tray of cheap cassava cakes. He told me if I don't leave you, the bridge project downstream will be rerouted, and this entire field and our home will be wiped off the map by forced flood planning." Diep choked up her tears, finally overflowing. "I can handle being poor, James, but Ly can't be homeless. I can lose you, but I won't let her lose her future because of the selfishness of adults. Our love is too expensive, and I can't afford the price." James stood frozen like a stone statue. He thought of his powerful father, a man who believed everything in life had a price tag. James had walked away from the city and his tailored suits to come here working under the sun and rain at construction sites just to be near her. He thought sincerity could beat prejudice, but he was wrong. His father didn't use money to buy her off. He used the very thing she loved most to blackmail her. "I'll talk to him. I'll renounce my inheritance. And then what?" Diep cut him off. "He'll only hate us more. The more you sacrifice for me, the more his shadow will loom over Nye's life. I don't want her growing up being hated by her own grandfather. I want her to have peace here in these fields, even if it means not having you." Nye walked out from the bedroom, clutching a small teddy bear, her big eyes darting between her parents. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could feel how heavy the air was. She ran over and hugged James's leg. "Daddy, go!" White car. James knelt down and picked her up, burying his tear-streaked face in the crook of her tiny neck. The scent of milk and sunshine on her skin made his heart twist. He looked at Diep, the woman he worshipped, the woman who carried the weight of the world on her thin shoulders for him and their daughter. "Just go!" Diep said her back to him, her shoulders shaking violently. "Don't make me hate you for losing Nye's home." James knew that when Diep used the word hate, she was using the last bit of her strength to protect their child. He set Nye down. With trembling hands, he took off his expensive watch, the last relic of his old life, and placed it on the table next to the pebble necklace. "Diep, I don't know how to make you believe that I love you more than all that status and gold. But if my being here puts you two in danger, I'll step back. But remember one thing." James stepped up right behind her, his breath hot but shaky. "The creeks might turn muddy with the floods, and the fields might be buried, but this father will never abandon Nye. And this man will never stop loving you." James turned and walked out the door. The roar of the white car's engine faded into the distance until it was swallowed by the mountain wind. Diep collapsed onto the wooden floor. She pulled Nye close, sobbing silently. Little Nye started to whimper, reaching out her tiny hand to wipe her mother's tears. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" A week passed. The field stayed green, but the tall man in the orange safety gear was gone. Diep still woke up early to start the fire and make coconut cassava cakes, but they tasted bland now. When people at the market asked about the handsome young dad, Diep could only manage a bitter smile and say he'd gone back to the city for a new job. Every afternoon, Diep carried Nye to the top of the hill to watch the road. Every time a white car drove by, the little girl would shout, "Daddy, Daddy," only to be met by the haunting silence of the forest. Nye stopped eating. She no longer drummed her spoon on her high chair like a little musician. Instead, she spent her time clutching the pebble James had made for her, staring blankly toward the chicken coop. Diep realized that while she might have saved the roof over her daughter's head, she had accidentally torn down the home in the little girl's heart. One late afternoon, as the long shadows of the setting sun stretched across the fields, a luxury black car pulled up in front of the house. A man with white hair, dressed in a sharp suit, stepped out. It was James's father. Diep stood up, summoning every ounce of courage to face the man who had terrorized her. "Are you here to see your handiwork? I did exactly what you wanted." James is gone. The old man looked around the simple but spotless house, his gaze landing on little Ly, playing with pebbles on the porch. Without a word, he walked over to her. Ly looked up, her clear eyes showing no fear. She held out a pebble tied with a red string to him. "Grandpa." Stone. Pretty. The powerful man's weathered hand suddenly trembled. He saw 3 words crudely carved into the stone Ly's family. It was the handwriting of his son James. "He didn't go back to the city." The old man said, his voice raspy. "He went to another construction site, all the way at the northern border. He's working as a low-level laborer. No family name, not a single penny of my money. He told me, if you take away the home of the woman I love, I'll use these hands to build her 10 more until you finally understand the value of family." Diep was stunned. She had assumed he'd return to a life of luxury to forget her. She never imagined he would choose an even harder path to prove his love. The old man sighed and placed a folder on the table. "I've won at business my whole life, but I lost to my son. This is the permanent deed to this land and the cancellation of the downstream project. I don't need you to stay away from him anymore. Because without you, my son is just a hollow shell." He took one last look at Ly, a flicker of softness appearing in his eyes. "She looks just like James did when he was little. Take care of her, and take care of my foolish son too." As the black car disappeared, Diep stood there like she was in a dream. She clutched the folder to her chest. Her heart felt light, yet tears streamed down her face. She ran inside, grabbed her old phone, and with trembling fingers dialed the number she had memorized but hadn't dared to call all week. It rang, once, twice. "Hello, Diep." James's voice came through, buried under the noise of excavators and whistling wind. He sounded exhausted but hopeful. "James, come home. The cassava cakes are ready, and Ly is waiting for her daddy to put her necklace back on." The sun dipped behind the mountains, but this time it didn't bring darkness. Under the porch, Diep lit the stove again. The rich scent of coconut milk filled the air, mingling with the smell of fresh banana leaves. Ly sat in her chair, her tiny hands clapping to a familiar rhythm. Around her neck, the pebble sparkled in the glow of the fire. Their journey had weathered the scorching sun, the fierce floods, and the storms of the heart. But in the end, true love is like a cassava root deep in the red earth. Even when trampled and crushed, it grows in silence, sturdy and sweet, waiting for the warmth of a homecoming. After that fateful morning, James's white car never appeared on the trail leading into the valley again. He hadn't gone back to the city to kneel before his father as the old man expected. Instead, he had vanished completely. In reality, James was hiding out in a rundown apartment on the edge of the city. He had swapped his orange safety gear for a simple black jacket. Instead of construction blueprints, he now pored over classified documents, wiretap recordings, and cash flow diagrams of the real estate empire run by his father William. James knew that empty words couldn't protect Diep, he decided to do something insane, find proof that his father had bribed officials to alter flood zoning, a scheme designed to forcibly seize land from the poor, including Diep's farm. "I'm sorry, Dad," James whispered, flipping through a page detailing off-book expenses. "But you used your power to suffocate lives. Now I have to use that same power to set my family free." Back at the luxury villa downtown, William smashed a crystal glass against the floor. James's disappearance didn't make him worry. Instead, it deeply wounded his pride as a ruler. "He dares use what I taught him against me," he hissed at his assistant. "Does he really think a few scraps of evidence can shake this empire?" William's eyes flashed with malice. He knew exactly where his son's only weakness lay. If James wanted to attack head-on, William would choose to annihilate the base. "Get ready. If my son wants to play the hero, I'll show him the price of justice. Start with that cassava farm." At the farm, Diep lived in a state of constant dread. After the breakup, she thought she'd be left in peace to raise her child, but she was wrong. James's absence brought a terrifying silence. Things began to spiral when strangers started loitering around the house. Then Nee's chickens were poisoned, wiped out in a single night. Nee sobbed over the lifeless birds, unable to understand why her little friends wouldn't wake up. "Mommy, chickens sleeping. Wake up." Nye tugged at her mother's arm. The pebbles on her necklace clinked together, a lonely sound in the empty house. The breaking point came one afternoon. As Diep was carrying a basket of cassava back from the creek, she discovered her entire lush green field had been sprayed with herbicide. The air reeked of chemicals. The leaves hung limp and blackened, as dark as a man's heart. Diep collapsed among the dying plants. This wasn't just food. It was milk money. It was Nye's future. Why? What did we ever do wrong? In her moment of total despair, a fleet of black cars appeared again. William stepped out this time, dropping the facade of elegance for pure, cold ruthlessness. "You see, your crops are dead. Next, it'll be this house," the old man said, looking at Nye with utter contempt. "My son is trying to put me in prison. Do you think he'll succeed? A boy playing man against an old fox like me." He walked toward Diep and ground his expensive shoe into a withered cassava root. "With one snap of my fingers, you and this child will vanish from the map of this valley. Every time James finds a piece of evidence, I will tear another shingle off your roof. Call him. Tell him to stop or start picking out a coffin for your dream of a peaceful life." Diep looked the powerful man straight in the eyes. In that moment, her fear vanished, replaced by the raw instinct of a mother. She stood up tall and defiant. "You can kill the fields, and you can level this house, but you will never kill the love James has for us. The more cruel you are, the more push your own son further away. You aren't a father. You're just a lonely man sitting on a pile of money." Slap a stinging blow to the face sent Diep sprawling. Nye screamed, lunging forward to grab William's leg and biting down hard. "You little brat." The old man raised his hand toward Nye, but Diep, like a wounded tigress, threw herself over her child to protect her. Meanwhile, in a discreet law office, James had secured the final piece of the puzzle, his father's own signature on the forced flood discharge plan. He didn't go to the police immediately. Instead, he sent a short text directly to his father's phone. "Dad, look behind the car. I'm standing right here." William froze, turning his head toward the slope. James was standing there covered in dust, but with eyes burning with resolve. He walked closer, showing no fear of the hulking bodyguards. "Stop it, Dad," James said, his voice eerily calm. "I've already sent all these files to the press and the prosecutor's office. If you take one more step to hurt Diep and my daughter, my partner will hit send. Do you want to protect your empire, or do you want to spend the rest of your life behind bars?" "Je m'en fais cinq Mars." William looked at his phone screen, his aging face turning pale. He realized James was no longer the obedient son he once knew. He had learned how to fight like a man protecting his family. "You'd betray your own father for a woman. No, I'm doing this for justice and to save whatever is left of your soul. You've gone too far." The situation didn't end with an immediate arrest. William was forced to compromise. The downstream project was suspended indefinitely. The destroyed fields were compensated under the guise of an anonymous charitable foundation. But the price for James was a total severance from his family. He was disinherited and smeared in the media outlets loyal to his father. He walked away from the high society world with nothing but the clothes on his back and a tarnished reputation. Late one evening, as mist blanketed the valley, James walked toward the wooden house. No white car, no designer watch. He only carried a small bag, a few chicks to replace the ones Nee had lost. Diep was sitting on the porch, holding her old basket. When she saw the familiar silhouette, she couldn't believe her eyes. "James!" He stopped a few paces away, his face gaunt and covered in stubble, but his smile was as warm as the day they met. "I'm home. I'm not a rich heir anymore. I'm just a homeless construction worker. Do you still need a farmhand to help you harvest cassava?" Diep ran to him, throwing her arms around him. This time, there were no goodbyes. Their tears mingled bitter yet sweet. Nee ran out of the house shouting, "Daddy, Daddy," before flying into James's arms. He lifted her up, finally feeling the weight of true happiness. The next morning, James and Diep went out to the fields together. The poisoned plants had been cleared away, replaced by new sprouts being tucked into the earth. The red basalt soil remained as rich as ever, always ready to embrace those who know how to work and how to love. James gripped the hoe, and the first strike of his new life bit into the earth. Diep stood beside him, wiping the sweat from his brow. They knew his father was still out there, that the hatred might not have fully vanished, and that financial struggles would soon close in. But as they watched Nee wearing her pebble necklace and skipping between the new furrows, they finally understood. Peace isn't the absence of storms. It's finding each other in the middle of one and rebuilding a home together stone by stone on a foundation of trust. Smoke curled once more from the roof of the small house. The rich scent of coconut milk filled the kitchen. This time, Diep wasn't molding the cakes alone. James's rough, calloused hands worked right alongside hers. "The cassava cakes taste better today, don't they?" Diep asked softly. James looked at his wife, then his daughter, and finally toward the distant horizon where the dawn was breaking. "That's because today they taste like freedom. Under the shade of the ancient trees, the new crop began to reach toward the sky. A new journey had begun, the journey of humble farmers who had defeated a monster with nothing but kindness and the undying bond of family. The mountain wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden door, carrying the chill of the night mist. James sat at the wooden table, the flickering oil lamp casting his long shadow against the wall. Diep and little Ly were fast asleep, but James remained awake. He was waiting for someone. A knock came, a rhythmic 3-2-1. James stood up instantly, gripping his storm lantern. The door creaked open, and a tall, thin figure in a black trench coat and a low-slung hat stepped inside. It was Fat. Fat was James's best friend. From his university days abroad, a financial investigator who had once been pushed to the brink by William for daring to probe one of the corporation's ghost projects. You're still breathing after that slap from the old man. Fat took off his hat, a half smirk on his face, though his eyes were full of concern. James poured a cup of hot tea and pushed it toward his friend. He backed Diep into a corner. "I can't just sit here anymore, Fat. I need your help." Fat pulled a tablet and several thick stacks of financial documents from his bag. "I've been tracking William's money trail for 3 years. The old man is careful, but he has a weak spot. The Green Paradise Resort Project, right on the border of Diep's land." James narrowed his eyes. "What's the catch with that project?" Fat lowered his voice. "He's been using shell companies to wash money from overseas tax evasion. This land isn't just for a resort. It's a graveyard for illegal investments. I found proof that he bribed local officials to forge environmental impact reports, the very thing that caused that forced flood discharge." James tightened his fist. "What do we need to finish this?" "We need the original black ledger, the one his private secretary is holding on to. It records every off-the-books payment. He's been threatening her, and she's currently hiding in a hotel in the next province. If you can convince her to testify, your father is officially going to prison." The next morning, Diep woke up earlier than usual. She found James and Fat hunched over a topographic map of the valley. James's eyes were filled with a grim resolve, but also a deep sense of pain. Diep walked over, placing her small hand on his shoulder. "James, you're going back into the line of fire, aren't you?" James turned around and took his wife's hands. "Diep, this is the only way for us to have a real life. If we don't bring him down now, he'll be back. And next time, it might be more than just the fields he destroys." Diep went silent for a long time. Then she walked into the bedroom and brought out Ny's small pillow. From inside the stuffing, she pulled out an old USB drive. "James, my late husband left this behind before he died in that tunnel collapse years ago. He was a site engineer working under your father. He told me, if I ever don't come home, keep this to protect yourself." James and Fat were stunned. It turned out Diep had been holding a piece of the truth for years without even realizing it. On that drive was footage of the construction site where materials were skimmed off the top, leading to the fatal accident that William had used his fortune to cover up. The plan was set in motion. Fat used his tech skills to distract the corporation's security system, creating a fake network glitch to lure the guards away from the records room. Meanwhile, James posed as a delivery man, infiltrating the building he once called home. James's heart hammered in his chest. Every hallway and every security camera was familiar. But now they felt hostile. "James, you have 3 minutes before the backup security team returns." Fat's voice crackled through the micro earpiece. James slipped into the secretary's office and found the wall safe. Betting on his father's sentimental numbers, James tried a code his own birthday. Click. The door swung open. Inside, there wasn't just the black ledger. There was an old photograph of a young William holding baby James in his arms. For a split second, James hesitated. Hatred and blood ties tore at his heart. "James, get out now. They've spotted you." Fat screamed through the comms. The moment James stepped out of the building, a line of black cars was already waiting. William stepped out, his face purple with rage. "You really think you can get away, James? I'm not running, Dad. I'm facing you." James held up the black ledger and the USB drive. "This drive holds the lives of the workers who died. This ledger holds your lies. I'm handing all of it over to the prosecutors right now." William laughed maniacally. "You think the press will run that I own half the newsrooms in this city? Guards seize him." Just as the bodyguards lunged, police sirens wailed from every direction. Fat hadn't been working alone. He had secretly been in contact with a federal task force that had been investigating real estate conglomerates for months. "William, you're under arrest for money laundering, bribery, and gross violations of labor safety regulations." The old man collapsed beside his luxury car. The empire he built on the blood and tears of the poor had finally crumbled, brought down by the only son he had ever pinned his hopes on. 3 days later, James returned to the valley on an old bus. He had nothing but the clothes on his back and a soul that was finally free. As he walked down the trail, he saw the smoke rising from his home in the distance. Diep was sitting on the porch, and little Ly was taking steadier steps across the green grass. James stopped, taking a deep breath of the scent of the earth and roasted cassava. Diep looked up, saw him, and dropped her basket of banana leaves. She ran to him, but this time she wasn't alone. Little Ly waddled right behind her, shouting, "Daddy, Daddy!" James knelt down and pulled them both into his arms. "It's over, honey. From now on, we're just ordinary farmers." Fat stayed to help fixing the chicken coop and bringing in a new brood of chicks that filled the garden with life again. That evening, they gathered around a simple dinner table. "What's next for you?" Fat asked, looking out at the cassava sprouts rising strong after the flood. James looked at Diepy and took her calloused hand in his. "I'm going to help Diep build a cassava cake cooperative. We won't just sell at the local market. We'll take the flavors of this valley even further. We'll do it through honest hard work, without any of my father's hollow glamour." Diep smiled, her eyes sparkling with happiness. She knew that no matter how much temptation or power existed in the world outside the strength of a small family under a thatched roof gathered around a warm hearth was the most enduring thing of all. Night fell, and the valley drifted into a peaceful sleep. The sound of the bubbling creek seemed to tell the story of a man who dared to give up everything for love, and a woman whose goodness could soften the hardest of hearts. Ly slept soundly between her parents, her tiny hand still clutching the red string of her pebble necklace. Tomorrow the sun would rise again, and the scent of toasted cassava would drift across the hills, a testament to a love that survived the storm to bloom in the heart of the great forest.